This is a low energy podcast. Don't bring your energy here. Happy Thanksgiving, Rabbit Trails Nation. We need some kind of like really cool. Let's go, everybody. Is that from Nate Land? You listen to that podcast, right?
Nate Land's that's a great
I think
podcast.
that
Nate
guy's
Bargatze is hilarious.
Yeah.
Very funny. And super clean. But I think comedians, I'm not a prude, so I can handle some, maybe some off color humor. It doesn't necessarily make me that uncomfortable. Although it bothers me when comedians are like, there's like a whole new generation of comedians that it's like that's their go-to is like shock. Yeah. And so it's kind of like I just feel like your craft as a comedian, you're kind of like you're just doing it's
being lazy.
It's being lazy, and so that's what I like about Nate Bargatze is his comedy. He's really had to think it through because he's super clean. He's a Christian. He doesn't do he's not openly a Christian, but it's he's a churchgoer. He's
a closet Christian.
Yeah, he wants to make. He's a comedian. He's worked at his craft for a long time. He's got really good, funny stuff. But it's good. Yeah, because he's had to he can't just do the simple thing. And him and Jim Gaffigan. I like Jim Gaffigan too.
Jim Gaffigan's hilarious. Also a Christian. Yeah, strong Catholic.
Yep. A lot of kids.
That makes him a strong Catholic, I think.
Yes.
Isn't it
one of the signs?
One of the signs. You will know them by their fruits.
Yeah.
Well, how are you? Happy Thanksgiving. We are recording this on Thanksgiving Day 2021. Yeah. We woke up, or my wife and I woke up today and realized, oh my gosh, it's Thanksgiving. Yeah. And so I went to the store. It was packed. Of which I can only assume that Thanksgiving has made its way to Spain and everyone was getting the last minute things for it. Or it might have been the sale that Lidl was having on Christmas stuff. I don't know. One of the two.
Yeah, that's probably a for a lot of Americans an odd kind of thing, but we forget too, like there's no lead up here, obviously, to Thanksgiving.
Right.
So it kind of sneaks up on you.
We don't even have a Starbucks in Santiago de Compostela, so there's no pumpkin spice lattes roaming around. How is a person supposed to know it's almost Thanksgiving without the knowledge which I don't like pumpkin spice lattes, but anyway,
it's all right. That's all right. But usually there's been years where the only reason I knew it wasn't like it was Thanksgiving. I mean, we knew it was coming up because we had planned, but sometimes we would do like our Thanksgiving event like the next week, right? Because that was a busy week, and so you're like, you're checking the stock market, and you're like, gosh, what the stock market's like. It's not going, and you're it's
something's wrong.
It's Thanksgiving. It's the apocalypse.
Yeah, well, we're celebrating on Saturday, so I had Saturday on my mind, and we didn't forget that it was Thanksgiving. In defense of my wife, she was well aware of it, but we hadn't done any planning. I forgot it was Thanksgiving, so anyway, went to the store. We're skipping the turkey. We're doing a chicken.
Huh, interesting.
It's only the four of us tonight, so we just decided turkeys are really large.
I'll let it pass. I'll let that pass.
Yeah, honestly, so funny story. So we often would do Thanksgiving outreaches in Sweden, even when we didn't really have that many Americans in our team. Actually, in one of our cities where we eventually had no Americans, the Swedish students kept the Thanksgiving outreach because they loved it so much, and it just became known as a thing in that town. Anyway, so one year,
like Thanksgiving.
We had I think we had a couple hundred people come in. I mean, it was a massive thing that we were doing. And it's probably, I don't know, 120, 100, something like that. A couple hundred's too much. Anyway, so we get through the night and we serve all the turkey, and turkeys are usually really expensive in Sweden. And so one year we were running low on budget, and we're like, let's just go ahead and buy some chickens because we think we're going to be short on turkey. We'll do it. We'll mix it in. It'll be fine. Swedes don't really eat a whole lot of turkey anyway. They're not going to taste the difference when you mix everything on the plate. Plus it's dark in the room, stuff.
It's a bird.
So anyway, so we serve all the turkey, and we're kind of like, man, that just didn't seem like it was enough turkey for everybody. Anyway, we're cleaning up at the end of the night, and we open one of the extra refrigerators, and in the bottom drawer is half of the fowl, but that we had prepared for the evening. But it wasn't the chicken that was left over; it was actually the turkey. So no one got turkey that year. Everyone got chicken. So anyway, chicken. Sorry, 2015 Swedes, you got gypped on your Thanksgiving Day. We've done years where we have done. Let's see. I think one year we did probably 3 or 4 Thanksgiving dinners for students.
Yeah.
Man, those are brutal years.
Yeah. Most of our campus ministries they're not even led by Americans or have Americans on them. They'll do really? Thanksgiving. Yeah.
I think it's fun. People are really interested to see.
Yeah. It's a great holiday. I mean, the idea of giving thanks. And okay, so let's just get this out of the way really quick. Let's just be clear. The first Thanksgiving in America officially celebrated was in Texas. It was. Look it up, people.
Really?
Yeah, it was. Spanish. It was a Spanish.
Wait a second.
It was Spanish, actually. The first Thanksgiving ever was Spanish.
And what about like the second year after the Mayflower?
It was before. This was like almost it was well before the Mayflower.
Okay, I love Texas. I'm a native Texan. I love it when you look into these things.
This is true.
It is, but a little piece of me is dying inside right now, and I don't know why. I feel very confused. I'm gonna have to call a counselor.
It was an expeditionary group. They were traveling. They got lost, and they made got back to El Paso because they were saved. They celebrated a feast, and it was a day of Thanksgiving, and it's an official record that exists. I believe you see in El Paso, Spanish. It was in El Paso. It predates you can look it up online. It's pretty well attested to. Now, the actual tradition that we celebrate comes from the Mayflower. I mean, not the Mayflower, but the English ones, right? So that's what we celebrate. But if you want to be really technical, you can say the first actual official Thanksgiving what happened in El Paso, Texas.
And then it was what was it, Abraham Lincoln who instituted during the Civil War as a national kind of observance day of like celebration.
I believe so.
My son was doing he was asked by his teacher yesterday to prepare a presentation for his class tomorrow. So he was up all night doing PowerPoint, not up all night, but he was up late enough preparing PowerPoint for, and so I love it. My son's getting a little bit of humor, and he one of the pictures that he showed for and the first Thanksgiving feast was had, he showed a fast food takeout tray. That was pretty awesome.
A little social commentary.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty great. It was good to see his humor.
Yes.
Well, okay. So hard to be American when you live overseas. How many, you've been overseas now for what, 15, 17 years, something like that?
16, more or less. 16 years with, some trips back to, I think we've done a couple Thanksgivings.
Right.
In the States for different reasons, but yeah, we moved our stuff over here about 16 years ago. So a long time.
I left the US about 20 years ago.
Yeah. That's a long time.
I'm realizing, and that's a long time. So now when people are starting to ask me, so what is it like in the US? And I go, I haven't really lived there for 20 years. I'm actually getting to the point where maybe I should stop telling people what things are like in the US.
Yeah. No, I have no idea. I can say what things are like in certain parts of Dallas, but that's about it.
Certain parts of Dallas, certain neighborhoods of Dallas. Well, let's not go into Dallas neighborhoods again. We gave the people enough of that last week.
Yeah.
Hey, Garrick, I was checking our stats for we've had quite a few people listen from Albania.
Oh, that's awesome.
So welcome Albanian listeners. Very, very encouraging. Love your country. Was there 4 years ago or so.
Yeah, I remember when you went.
Man, amazing country. Yeah. So underrated or so unknown to so many people. Amazing people, beautiful beaches, beautiful mountains.
Yeah.
Just incredible. We had an incredible vacation when we were there.
I haven't been.
Can't say as much for the Citroen that we rented. That was a bit of an interesting thing, but we made it anyway. And so if you ever get a chance to go, to Albania, you should definitely take that chance. It's incredible.
Yeah, I've done a little research because we're always looking for places to maybe take a trip, but Albania just looks fantastic. It looks that's like up in the north. There's this place called like the Forbidden Mountains with prohibited mountains.
Yeah.
It looked just amazing.
Yeah,
like the kind of like alpine mountains up there.
Yeah, or even they're like spiky. I did a deep dive into like Albanian, topography and culture, and that's what I do, right? Because context is one of the things I love. So while I was there, I was like up all night reading Wikipedia and any article that I was going down the rabbit trails of black holes of context and stuff. So really cool place. So welcome, Albanian listeners. I don't know how to say welcome in Albania. Actually, when I was there, I asked a waiter, I was like, hey, how do you say thank you in Albanian? And he just looked at me and he goes, don't worry about it. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, it's too hard. It's Albanian's impossible. Don't worry about it. We speak English.
Well,
I thought that was pretty awesome.
Something else that happened this month that I think will be a good segue into what we're going to talk about is that 30 years ago, so 1992, Octung Baby by U2 came out. Arguably, maybe their best album, and also an incredible album. And maybe we talk about it some other time too. Great album, great theology, great thinking. But why I think is a good segue is because that album, that tour, particularly the Zoo TV tour, was confused some people, but was actually a kind of a prophetic performance art thing, talking about how technology was going to change us, was going to change the world, and how that could be very dangerous. And so U2 were kind of early on of using technology to kind of also mention technology with consumerism, capitalism, all this stuff coming together. Might have some blind spots for us. And so that's kind of what we're going to jump in today. But I thought it was interesting that 30 years ago, U2. What's your favorite U2 song?
What is my favorite U2 song?
Yeah, what's your favorite U2 song?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
It's hard.
Well, and of course, you put me on the spot, so I'm like, I don't know.
Sorry.
Honestly, I've always been. I'm one of these people who my favorite songs are always some of the obscure ones that they have. Yeah. 40 has always been, which is one of their more outright.
Actually, God wrote that song.
Songs. Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they did put the music. They put the music to it, and they rearranged the words a little bit. But
I was actually wondering how we were going to get to our subject today. So you not only did you do the German, I mean, because not only did you land the plane with the technology and how we work that in, but also the fact that German is in there. I mean, if you can come up with a Korean idea, we're golden. Okay, so what we want to talk about today, apropos of, I did Burnout is it's not just a river in Egypt. Did I just mix a metaphor? I think.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so burnout's a big deal, and the causes of burnout are. I think burnout's all around us. So I'm not really sure there's too many people, just like with Steve Cuss, when we talked with him, anxiety is already all around us, but it's low grade anxiety. So it's not like, can't get out of bed anxiety, but just like I'm kind of stressed, or whatever. And there are different ways to put it, but yeah, burnout's around us. And so I did in some of my research on burnout and reading and things for part of my degree in Christian leadership. I hate the fact that they call it Christian leadership. Just call it leadership. Why is it going to be? Anyway, came across this guy, Byung-Chul Han. Sorry for anyone who speaks Korean. I butchered his name. He is a Korean-German philosopher. So he's originally from Korea, but now lives in Germany, and has done a lot of work on actually burnout and how technology how it's affecting us and how it's thinking. A lot of thinking about it. So anyway, thought we could go there. Garrick, I sent you an article. What were some of your first impressions of just kind of some of the thinking there?
Yeah, well, I think Han is jumping on to, something that I just mentioned that Bono and U2 were seeing early on, is that, but I think he's jumping, then obviously bringing in philosophy and some pretty deep thinking about those things, and how technology and maybe I think a society that hyper consumeristic, hyper productive, hyper individualistic, those things have kind of created this, you always have to be careful, because philosophers, they live by making sense of the world, or coming up with what's going to be happening in the world. And they can sometimes, also go overboard on things as well, as their ideas lead them to certain things, so, you got to always kind of level things out a little bit, but I think what he would say generally is that for many reasons, our use of a phone, and how Instagram, Twitter, all these things where we are now on display for the world ourselves, and everyone else is on display for us, has created a world where burnout, where anxiety, where all those things are much more prevalent. And I recently saw, to tie to this, is his name Jonathan Haidt? He's a sociologist.
Haidt. He's the guy I was trying to think of last week when I was. Yeah. Okay.
He was talking about how more and more the correlation, the rise of anxiety, the rise of depression, particularly in teenage girls, which is an epidemic of this, is there's more and more scientific and theological evidence that is tying that to the use of smartphones. So to go to that, I think what Han is saying particularly is that we're living in a time when we are dominated. I think he says, by the iPhone or the smartphone, whatever you want to call it, and that domination of being looked at or being perceived or having to present ourselves constantly, and then the stress of all that goes along with that is creating more of a burnout society. We've lost things like ritual. We've lost certain humanness things, humanity type things. That's not, how would you say? We've lost certain elements of our humanity, he would say.
Yeah,
that humanist things. Humanity is
put it in Spanish syntax. We have lost the humanness of the humanity of the. You have to put in a lot of ofs.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Ritual, for instance, losing ritual or rhythms or things that typically held people together in society's culture. We're losing the objects. He even says, like, objects are being lost. So I'm not sure, I would necessarily go as far on everything that he says, but I think he's got a very, very strong point about where we are in late modern society.
Yeah, he goes. I thought some of the things that he says are really spot on, in the sense of, so we used to say, with one of the first things that we would teach new missionaries when they come over, and then things that we always kind of have to repeat to ourselves, even as we adjust daily, and we teach our kids this, but the comparison is the thief of all joy.
Yeah.
And he says we're constantly comparing, because of technology, be it social media, but also just everything online. We're constantly comparing ourselves with others. It's precisely this comparison that makes us all the same. But just this idea that we're constantly comparing ourselves with others, it creates a heightened sense of anxiety that's just always present. It's ever present.
Yeah.
And because our smartphones, there's the ticks of your thumb, and moving, and the sense of, okay, I put it down. And I see it in my kids. They have iPads for school and stuff, and they constantly, when they get home, they're like, hey, can I look this up? And we constantly have to say, no, get away, from the phone. But just this sense of it makes us want to come back. And then the things that we're drawn to are the things that we compare ourselves to. And this just creates just a huge sense of, I think at the end of the day, it's exhausting, and it creates it does create a burnout.
Yeah.
How do you see not just technology, but this sense of comparison, or you can take it wherever you want, but how do you see it present, or do you see it present in in ministry, with staff, other places?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would, Han talks about this is like a domineering kind of society, the domination of, he doesn't say it this way, but digitization and this kind of society where everything is observed, all the time, right? So which made me think about the English philosopher Jeremy Bentham, who talked about the panopticon, right, which was this concept of actually prison, to control the prisoners in a prison system. If they think that they're being watched at all times, they'll behave. They'll fall in line, right? So it made me think of that, and then I was then thinking about Michel Foucault, the French philosopher, is a horrible person, but he talked a lot about this. That's how societies control people is by this sense of everything is being watched or gathered. Something, I think it was a book called Discipline and Order, or Disciplined Society. And so he was a bunch of guy who wanted to break free, right, from everything, and no rules. So he saw society as putting rules. That was a way of controlling and seeing everything that happens. So you can say someone that's wrong to do, or, so he was wanting to go a different direction than Han, where I think Han is saying, we're once again being dominated by something, whereas Foucault's thing was kind of like just society in general, like rules, norms. Right. So I think on one hand you have with Han, he's going and saying, no, I think he's saying, this is stuff that it's now invading into our personal lives in a deeper way and affecting us in ways that we're not even aware, but we're dominated by it now. And so I think when you take that to its natural next steps, you start worrying about, who's got information, who's controlling us, who's moving us in certain directions and making us think and feel, or wanting to make us think and feel certain ways. I think you look at China with its social, what's that called? Social.
It's like social credit score.
Social credit system, and that, and that's maybe the darker side of it, right? That you now can actually control people. But what we're looking at is the wider. I don't think anyone's trying to control us necessarily in one entity in the Western free society, but we are now kind of giving up our own humanity. And I don't know if I see it among a lot of staff necessarily. I think it's ever present. I think he's got that right in some sense. I think it's probably different depending on your generation as well. But I know
that's true.
It's easy to go on Facebook or Instagram and think, oh, I've got to have that, or I need to. So I think we're very susceptible to what you said of a lot of anxiety or burnout, of needing to perform, needing to be, because there's a sense of you have to perform, or you're being watched, or you're absorbing other people's.
He makes the point that because of technology, we become ever presently aware of ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's this constant focus on self, and in a world where depression, then that's the depressed person can only think about themselves.
Yeah.
And so he kind of says we have to rediscover the other. And his point for that is you can't. Two things. One, we need silence. So we need to be disconnected from technology, and have moments of silence for our brains and our bodies to kind of recover from that. So he actually, I started watching a what do you call it, documentary on him. And he actually every day walks through one particular graveyard in Germany. Now, German graveyards are beautiful, like a lot of Northern European graveyards are actually really just they're I mean, there's a reason they call it the church garden. And they're just gorgeous a lot of times, just really well kept and green and lush and everything. So he walks through this one in Berlin on his way to the university, and then he walks through this one space of the university where it's kind of part of the old bombed out structures from World War II are still there, and they haven't really done anything with it. And he just goes and sits in the empty space, and just talking about that, just you have to have the emptiness, you have to have the downtime in order to kind of one, maybe stop thinking about yourself, but to denoise. But then he talks about the idea that we need the other. We have to rediscover the other. And to me, it's fascinating. I think we in ministry, we're often focused on the other. But what can happen is we compare ourselves with others who are doing ministry or doing other things. And so even some of our efforts within social media to make our ministry known or connect with other people or whatever, I think can actually end up propelling this sense of got to do more, got to, just this sense of, I just got to keep going. I got to keep moving, got to keep doing these things. Whereas it seems to me if we were able to slow down and we're able to make the other the focus, and maybe social media or some of these things weren't constantly there, maybe might be, I wonder, I'm trying to hedge the way I say this, but I wonder if some of the joys of ministry could not be a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
I wonder how much the joys of ministry get taken away because we're thinking of how we can talk about it on social media or tell people about it, all for good reasons. So it's not necessarily selfish reasons. It's like this sense of like, well, I want people to know what we're doing because I want God to get the glory, or I want more people to be involved with us. For those of us who are in movement, related things, we want people to join up. And so it's exciting and it's everything else. But I think we can get so caught up in that I think that we can forget some of the joy of just being with a person who's in need. I don't know.
I think it's fascinating there too, the two things he pushes back to, which is silence, clearing your mind, and the other. This is very incredibly Christian concepts.
Yeah.
Because really what we have to offer in that is that we are a people who are about the other. We are primarily about other people. That is the message of the gospel is that you are transformed by the love of God so you can love others, including your enemy.
Yeah.
Right. So the other is incredibly important. That's basic Trinitarian theology. But then the other thing is this need for silence, this need for respite, which is prayer in our lives, or meditation.
Right.
The ability to disconnect, for that humanity needs that. God has built that into us, the need for the other, the need for others to other us, right? To understand that we are the other as well, and that we come together. So I think that's fascinating. I think what's happening, what I understand is that in this, if I can be so bold as to say this, we have become our own panopticon. We observe ourselves and make ourselves the kind of the key person in the movie, right? And so everything. So we are so I think what he's saying is we're so self-absorbed that we're losing that connection to the other. We're losing that connection to reality, even in some sense, right? What is real? What is good? What is, and that's why, it's good to, for instance, I think he's talking about objects, have things in your life that are objects. Like, for instance, a good pair of cowboy boots, like expensive, nice,
a good smoker,
some things that are real, that have meaning to you, also, whereas we're moving away from that. I think he overstates this a little bit. But I think his warning is strong and good, and points us, I think it really actually points us the right direction. I think what the church and Christians have to offer is disconnection, is the other, is that we are only really truly humans when we are in community with God and with other people, and that means the other. And so I think it's fascinating. He's going that direction.
And he makes it's really, I wonder what his personal belief is, because he gets so close to some of these things. So I doubt that in any way he's a Christian yet. He tends to go there. I do think that, so if you take some of his work and then what, is it Charles Murray, and the philosopher? Is it? It's not Charles Murray, is it?
No, but it's
Canadian philosopher. It's someone Murray.
Well, it's the name Murray? It's name of the former Liberian warlord. That's the same name.
Yes, because
that's how I remember it. Because
that one's gonna help me, Garrick. But anyway,
I have the book here on my.
Anyway, but then you got James K.A. Smith, who goes to some of this too.
Yeah.
Smith would say, "Look, we are what we love, and so we need to form. We can form what we love by doing things." So he just makes a bigger case for. We haven't become an unritualized society. Smith would say, we've switched our rituals to secular practices. So the shopping mall is in some way shaped like a cathedral, and when we go and we shop, we put we do these rituals of consumerism. So we put our credit card down, or we stare into our phone so our Face ID recognizes us so we can pay with Apple Pay or whatever else, an exchange of goods, and then we go and we get a coffee, and there's kind of these rituals and expectations that are surrounded that, or a football game is ritual.
Yeah.
And so I think I want to kind of revisit Smith, because I want to go back to what is his name, Hahn, and kind of try to work both of those in there. Of this, we haven't become a completely secularized, disembodied, unmystified society. We've just moved a lot of the mystification to other things. And so in some sense, I think what Hahn is saying is, go back to find something of meaning and purpose ultimately for us as Christians. And I think this is where we need to I want to be careful, proudly stand up and say, hey, we think we know where the ultimate value is found.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think where Hahn comes short is, of course, he would say you need to find something that has meaning. So, whatever it might be, but ultimately it's going to come up short if it's not found in Jesus Christ, if it's not found in community.
Yeah.
But I think he makes a point about capitalism and consumerism and all of these things. And it's not something I was completely aware of as a Christian growing up in America, but how much of our Christian community, and I think world now, is just, we have to really fight the consumerism that's around us, because it forms us, which I think it ultimately leads to burnout.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's a whole, the consumeristic drive. I'll throw the other guy I've studied a lot is a guy named Zygmunt Bauman, and he talks about, consumer. And I want to be careful. I'm not saying this is a consumer products that that we create things is bad. What is bad is what he would call desire. It's what we have in a hyper consumer society is that we don't actually desire necessarily, and this is once again his perspective point, the stuff is that the desire of it we desire.
Yeah.
So we, and I think that's had a lot to do with what's going on with the internet and things. With the internet, I sound like I'm 80. That's what's going on the internet. With our world that we live in, is that there's
America Online.
American Online. There's this desire of more and desire more, and that it's really not what we want more, but we want that feeling of desire, and maybe completion when we do a cute, but then we need more desire. So yeah, I think you're right. I think Charles Taylor, first of all, is a Canadian Christian philosopher.
It is Charles Taylor.
It is Charles Taylor, and it is
Charles
also,
Murray. Charles Murray wrote
is another guy.
He's a political philosopher. Works for AEI.
Right. So Charles Taylor, who wrote In a Secular Age and some other great books. If you're not reading Charles Taylor, although Secular Age is a little bit, it's a literally heavy lifting because it's like 1,000 pages long and huge.
Okay, but seriously, this book right here, for those of you not on our YouTube feed because it doesn't exist, The Burnout Society by Byung-Chul Han, who we were quoting here, it is 90 pages long.
Yeah,
and it's heavy lifting.
Yeah,
it is the thickest book I've read in a long time, but yet it's the shortest book ever. I mean, it is just packed with good stuff. Anyway, pick the book up, people.
Yeah. And I think so. I think something else that he says interesting in there, and I think why he's pushing towards the physicality, right? Relationships, physicality really being there. He says something very interesting here. If I can read it real quick. Well, first of all, he talks about that we're more interested in information and data than we are about actual things anymore, actual physicality,
right?
Which I think is very, 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 very fascinating, because it is true. We're maybe over
Facebook calling themselves Meta.
Yeah.
We're going to a metaverse, right? I mean, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. But he talks here too about, the people working from home and being online. And I remember having this very same experience during the really hard lockdown. But it was a sense of loss of time.
Mm-hmm.
You would have, and I'm not blaming anyone. That's what we had to do, right? That was the only option, was, the ability to do it online. We couldn't do it any other way. But there was a sense of that 2 days, just it didn't happen, or it didn't have the same, we had a couple, 3 day online conferences, and it just it left this very strange kind of feeling. I don't know if you felt that way as well.
Oh yeah.
And so he says this. He says, he's talking about objects, because these things are support structure that provides peace of mind in life. Nowadays, is often obscured by information. The smartphone is not a thing. It produces and processes information, and information gives us the opposite of peace of mind. It lives off the stimulus of surprise and immersing us in a whirlwind of news. Rituals give life some stability. The pandemic has destroyed these temporal structures. Think of remote working. When time loses its structure, depression sets in. So he's saying even that the nature of time is I've had that experience. You play video games all day, when you're a kid, and then all of a sudden, what happened? Like it's right, 3 a.m, But I was having that in the sense of when a conference, you get on a plane, you go there, you shake hands, you check in, you go to your hotel room, you go down, you have the meetings, you have coffee. Yeah, there's all these ritualistic things that happen in an actual conference that make the timing of it, that do something to us as humans, that make that a powerful moment, or a moment of learning, or a moment of connection. I mean, usually you don't get all that out of it, but it's more like the other stuff, the conversations that happen, the people you meet. And what he's saying, I think, is when you get rid of that, when everyone's working at home online, it just time loses its structure, so meaning begins to lose its structure, and then you just have depression. And I think it's very interesting talking about that. And I think that's where the church has got to get people back into the church, into the ritual of, you get up, you have your coffee, you get the kids in the car, you get them to church, you say hi to Bill.
Okay, so this is
all that is all part of the experience of being human.
Never say hi to Bill. That guy's a jerk.
Bill's a jerk.
But this is actually this goes back to what we talked about last week. I think it's going to be something that's going to be prominent in this season of
we've been
Rabbit Trail. But just this whole idea with digital. So I'm going to come back to it. That's one of my questions. It seems like everything Chulhan would be saying is look, don't. People are so the smartphone and the digital can't provide meaning, or maybe he's not saying that, maybe that's my interpretation of it, but it's so much noise that it creates anxiety.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So then I take that and say, well, as Christians, there's a storm outside. We need to be a harbor, and we need to go to what's really important, and creating space and community and everything else. This is how we can be different when the rest of the world's gone crazy.
Yeah.
Not how we can be different, but how we were made to be. That's probably the better way to put it. It's not utilitarian. It just is. So I guess what I struggle with is, if if it's all noise out there, why, and this is where we need to get an expert in here. Why do we need to spend so much time and energy trying to enter into the noise? Because I feel like it's just going to be lost in the noise, but I don't know how to combat that. So I guess it's kind of like, how do you, it's like, you don't want to become so countercultural that you become irrelevant. Like,
right.
But at the same time, it's where's that balance? And this is what I struggle with. And I don't have a good answer yet. I really don't, but do you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. It's, well, I mean, I think we have to maybe look at it a little bit as like, we need to prepare digital missionaries, in a sense, that people who can go into those spaces. But the end goal is to not stay in those spaces.
And that's the question, right?
Is to bring people out. And so we need the people who
oh my gosh, we just described the Matrix.
Yeah. It's almost, in some sense, that maybe that's what we're trying to do. Get I mean, because I think there's, like, once again, let's not, I mean, we don't, I did a doctorate online, and we met once a year, but we did everything else online. It was great. It was a great experience. The digitalization of things, it has its
value.
Its value. There's some great, so we're not saying, there's some great ways. There's people we can reach with the gospel we would never be able to reach because now we have digital stuff. There are communities where people live online, and that you can go in there, and that is a place where the gospel can interact. So we got to be careful about not just throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but we also got to be careful not boiling the baby in the bathwater. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so that's the danger. So we unfortunately, evangelicalism, we tend to go and see something new and go, that's it. And we all jump into it without thinking, or really going deep and thinking, how is this affecting us? How is this affecting our lives, our church? How's it affecting society? We're not a movement of deep thinkers. Let's just be honest. There are some, but we tend to like ignore them or skewer them, so we need to, the people who are going to be on the front lines, at least when I'm talking about crew, they need to be reading this guy. They need to be thinking through some of these things and really become reflective practitioners of their craft, be really good at it, but also understand its limitations and how it affects humanity, because clearly this stuff affects man. I'm also on the one end too, of like, it's going to affect people, but people will adapt and things will adapt. It's not the end of the world. This is not the first time we've had a major technological thing that's affected people in human history. I mean, I guarantee there's some guys sitting around talking about the wheel 8,000 years ago, or fire, and go, dude, fire. If this thing starts going out, it's just gonna be out of control. Soon people will be like cooking food. We can't have that. I mean, and so right. So there's always we're in a society that we're in a world that's always kind of having to correct. And unfortunately, there are going to be casualties on both ends, right?
Yeah,
people who get passed over because they have no access to digital, and then the people who get so into digital that they wake up one day and go, "Oh, my life's over," and I never had a relationship that was real. Right. So you're trying to use it for what it's good for, but not get sucked into the trap. And there's a lot of traps in our society now because we are a connected panopticon, internalized, hyper. There's a lot of things that are not healthy to humanity going on in the world today.
Well, so part of it, gosh, it's so like, okay, so you've seen or I don't know if you have or not, but I haven't actually watched it, but I know the premise of it or some of the details of it. The, what is it called? It's a documentary on Netflix about social media.
Yeah. The Social Network. That was the movie.
Anyway,
the movie about Mark.
Social Dilemma.
I've seen I think it's called Social Dilemma. I've seen about half of it. It's pretty good, yeah.
So they just kind of go through like, hey, we've got psychologists, we know the gamification of things, we know like, all these things of how to produce these results in people. Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's hyper directed marketing is what
right. Hyper directed marketing. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess ethically, I'm taking this as a completely different rabbit trail here, but ethically, in order to compete with highly to molecular level marketing, in order to compete with that, to get your message, quote unquote, out there as a Christian, the methods that you have to use, I think could be ethically questionable.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Yeah.
So should we be going there? And this is where we need to get an expert on, which we're working on. We're working on getting a couple of people.
We've got some people. Yeah.
So, but I just kind of wonder, like, okay, in order to compete with a Facebook or Instagram or any other social media to get people to use your platform and everything else, what do we need to do? And it's like, well, is that what we really need to be doing?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that we don't need to have people in the digital space. We certainly do. We want to bring people out of the matrix as much as possible. It's just, wow, it gets into this really big ethical question of is that how do we do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe it's not as ethically questionable as I would like to present it.
I think it's a valid and important question. I think we should always, as we enter into conversations about mission, and however we're defined that, we should be thinking that way. I mean, we should be thinking, we're already kind of there's one side, the practicality of it. There's another side, which is the ethicalness of it. And then there's another side, which is just the bare bones theology of it, Right. Is this, for lack of a better term, biblical? I'm not trying to, so for instance, is it, we can go down a lot of roads on that in the history of Christianity where things have been, and I don't want to be too hard on people because I wasn't in those moments or in that time in history when those things had to be done or those decisions had to be made, or that was the obvious thing to do. But sometimes we see that expediency or shiny new toys don't always produce what we want them, I would say. So I think caution is always a good thing.
It'd be interesting to see if we could get someone on here who's done some research on people who are measured and think through things. Because your comment about, that we need to be thinking through those things, and in evangelicalism, we don't necessarily always have a rich, robust history of that. But I don't think we have a rich, robust history of that as human beings. Like, I think there's a reason that our, Korean German philosopher is little known in the world. It's because he's going slow and thinking of things. And, we serve a God who was a Jewish carpenter in a land with no trees. So I think
it's been olive wood.
Yeah. So I just think that I think that tends to be human. We like new and shiny things, especially I think capitalistic, consumeristic cultures. Yeah. So, because when the pandemic hit, how many people told us that we would never be using office spaces again, and all those things. We were just jumping on new shiny things pretty quick there, and didn't think through, hey, how is this going to affect people's? And 2.5 weeks into working at home, companies were getting rid of leases because they were like, our people love working from home. This is going to save us money. And it's like, well, do we even know what the long haul, how is this going to affect people's overall health long haul? And it turns out 2 years into this, people are like, I just want to get back on a plane. So I don't know. I wonder, I think that's endemic of, or common among all humanity, but two.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right.
I'd like to find out what kind of person, how much of society, I don't want to boil things down. We should always be slow to think, and those are, or not slow to think, quick
to think.
we should be awesome. No, we should be thinking about things deeply and considering, and
we need theologians.
Yeah, we do. And we need philosophers and everything else. And we need to listen to them. I think that's part of it. But I just, okay. Well, we're going long here. So here's my last question, or longer than we said we were going to go. It's not long for this podcast by any stretch of the imagination. How much? So if we consider the smartphone produces result, or has this tendency to make us think that we can get just so much done and everything. How much are we being played by that as Christian missionaries, by thinking essentially we can, I think the question is that I'm wanting to ask is, are we falling into the trap of thinking we've got the silver bullet next to us, which is it's not a silver bullet. Like it's never going to accomplish what we needed to accomplish.
Yeah. I don't believe in silver bullets. Anytime anyone says that there's a silver bullet, I tune them out, because they like,
yeah, no, but I don't think anyone would say it. I just think
no. I think there's some people out there who say that. I think if you're fundraising on it, or you're very focused on that, you'll say it. This is the future. And I've heard people say that. I've heard people say certain things, or this will revolutionize everything, and not necessarily about technology, but other things. Like this is the game changer. I'm like, it's not a game changer. You haven't come up with anything new. Like it's not. Like the game changer is Jesus. Just do that. So, but I think we do in American evangelicalism, we do often think that way. We're just trained to think that way. So I don't think it's necessarily that's a problem, but it's a problem in America. But the great thing about it is then we pour a bunch of money and invest and get it going. And, and sometimes those things are incredible innovations, and that's why America creates a lot of innovations and a lot of great ideas, and a lot of art comes out of that, because we are the people who go, oh, let's do that, and I'm going to get crazy about that, but I think in missions, it's a long, slow plod that every once in a while God shows up and does something amazing. And, anyone saying this is the game changer, this is the thing, it's like, I don't necessarily think they're bad people, but I think they're way over optimistic about something that they don't know anything about, really. I think, and I think we tend to be real raw about stuff and go, this is it. This is going to be awesome. You're like, well, it might be, but who knows?
Yeah, this technology stuff. Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's interesting how quickly we, as human beings, seek to trust in horses and chariots, and not in the power of the living God, and in the trust of Him, in the trust that He is going to accomplish His will. There's a tension there that I feel as a human being, but also, as a follower of Jesus, of sitting back and knowing that He is God, and trusting, okay, Lord, I trust that You're in charge of this. I trust that You're going to accomplish and You're going to lead people, and the sense of responsibility that I have of, well, here are the challenges we face. How do we do that? And thinking strategically. All of those things are there. It's interesting though, when I mix that with my frenzy for renown, that's where I think it goes off the rails at least for me.
That was the essential message of the Zoo TV concert tour. It was to say that all this noise, all this fluff that we were chasing after, that we think is great and is going to give us contentment, it does not give you contentment. God gives you contentment. And that is the only thing that will give contentment. And so that was the fundamental issue. That's what Bono says. This is C.S. Lewis. This is Screw Tape Letters. This is we're showing people what they want, but what if you listen? And most of the lyrics are that. But if you listen under all that noise, there's someone talking, and that's God, and that's where you have to go. And so we have to realize that we are awash, I think, in a world of noise and competing nuttiness. Really, let's just be honest. Have you seen TikTok? What I understand we need frivolity in our life. I'm all for it. But it's like, what is going on? And under all that noise is the voice of God somewhere saying, you want something, but none of this stuff is going to answer that need, that deep need that you want.
Yeah. I think one of the big takeaways of this is that in the digital age and in the consumerist age where so much pleasure, and I don't mean that in the sexual sense, although certainly it's there. I mean it, and it's just a life sense. So the ability to very quickly through Amazon or whatever else get what you want in that moment. Meaninglessness does not come from being weary of pain. Meaninglessness comes from being weary of pleasure. And I think that's a big takeaway. Essentially, maybe that's what what's his face is trying to say. Han is trying to say is that we're getting so much pleasure that it's producing a meaninglessness, and the smartphone or technology enables that. It is a tool that does that. So I guess then the question for us becomes, how can we utilize that tool to highlight the source of all pleasure, the one who has created all things? That maybe boils it down a little bit too simplistically. And God is not our vending machine to get pleasure from, but he is the only inexhaustible source of wonder.
I think you're right. I think, and can you imagine what video games are going to be like in 20 years?
No, it's
they're going to be awesome. I'm going to say that, but they may not be good for you. But they may not. They will be the coolest thing ever, but it may not be healthy for you. It may not be a good place to be. And
gosh, there's a couple other things there that I want to go off on, but I think we should probably
finish up. I did want to say I do feel like in these conversations I feel like I'm getting old. I feel grumpy. Do you ever feel, I was watching a clip of Portlandia where Fred Armisen, he goes in and he's talking to his doctor. He goes, he's described the symptoms, and the doctor goes, so would you wait in line at a really good restaurant for about 30 minutes, or would you rather just go somewhere crappy because it's, you get the food quick? He goes, what? Do you see those people waiting in line? They're so lame and annoying. And he goes, have you ever said, get off my lawn? And he goes, no. He goes, well, and then so he's basically diagnosed with early onset grumpiness. So sometimes I feel like I might have early onset grumpiness. I'm trying to not be too
we don't want to become crusty. In the struggling of these things, you're not. You live in Spain. You can't be early onset crusty.
I hope not. Sometimes I just feel like, man, I'm getting old. I'm not that old, but it's like
it happens quickly.
The music.
You are
music.
You are a middle-aged father. That's true. That pretty much means that early onset crustiness has already happened. And lame dad jokes. All right, my friend. Well, a pleasure talking to you.
It was awesome.
Until we do this the next time. Bye.
Adios.
Buen camino.
Bye, con Dios.
God have mercy on your soul. All right. See you later.